Welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff, the show where we get into the shit that matters. No small talk, no surface level nonsense. Today I'm joined by science fiction and horror director Patrick Devaney, and we're digging into how art reflects the world around us, especially when it's making social commentary, getting political, or holding up a mirror to the times. And I know recently these days I've seen a lot of taboo about like how people don't want art to be political, but I feel like they kind of forget like the social commentary that's always been, especially like sci-fi and genres like that, like with Star Wars, which I guess is more sci-fi fantasy than like science fiction. The original Star Wars, George Lucas even said that the Rebels were based off like the Viet Cong, and the Empire was like he based that off the American Empire during the Vietnam War. So like that's why it's funny when you see people now saying like, oh, this is, I don't want any politics in the Star Wars, because it's always been political. And whether it's aliens, zombies, fascist empires, or time travel, we're breaking down how genre storytelling goes way deeper than people give it credit for. So thanks for coming on, Patrick. I'll let you introduce yourself, and maybe you could go. I know I said horror and sci-fi director. Maybe you could elaborate on that and just your thoughts on this topic. Because
thank you, man. It's nice to be here. Yeah, it's funny how often I'm hearing people saying the same kind of thing, like they don't want to see, they don't want to see politics and current events in their media. They don't want to deal with it. Mostly what I hear from people saying that are the people that are realizing that later in life they're identifying more with the Empire, and maybe they're not too comfortable with that. So it's like, yeah, it was cool when we were kids, and it was like, good guys and bad guys. And now my choices are resembling a lot of the things we're seeing in like shows like Andor and things like that. It's like, oh yeah, maybe I'm on the wrong side of this. Well, let's not talk about it. It should be fun. Pew pew lasers, and that's something I've been noticing a lot of as of the last couple of years. But yeah, my name is Patrick. I'm a writer and director of mostly science fiction right now. I cut my teeth in horror. I started a series called Zombie Hunter City of the Dead, which was the first zombie-based TV series on the air. And I went kind of rapidly into science fiction from that, because that's my first true love, growing up with Space 1999 and things like Star Wars and Star Trek and all that kind of good stuff. And I wanted to emulate that kind of thing, so I wanted to have that more in my life, and that's why I started just focusing primarily on science fiction. And I do I write my own films as well, so I do infuse current events and important topics into them. I've dealt with forced migrations. I've dealt with racism. I've dealt with sexism. I've dealt with worlds where emotions weren't allowed, suppression by the government, suppression by peers and society in general. And I like to make commentaries about that. I did a film recently, a couple of years ago, called Identity Check, which was about buying and selling a person's entire identity as a human being, and how when you get to a certain level in your billionairedom, perhaps this is something you could consider doing. So, which is a horrifying idea, but it's something we explored in that film. And that's the kind of thing that I like to do too. Star Trek was always perfect for that. It was a wonderful, wonderful place to have that kind of thing. The Twilight Zone, the original Twilight Zone, handled that. Science fiction in general has always been a mirror to who we are.
And Twilight Zone and Star Trek were very controversial for the times. Like I know Rod Serling tackled like racism and like authoritarianism and a lot of those themes.
Yeah, we had one episode that was banned from television forever with George Takei, about he's this young Japanese guy who shows up at a guy's house, and this guy was a real racist from World War II soldier, and he was really, really a horrible person. And then it dealt with the racism between these two men, how they both really felt about each other, and it was so on the mark that they banned it from the syndication when they spread it out. They didn't pick that one up. They didn't touch that. And I was maybe 50 years old before I saw that episode, But yeah, so that's something that, even early on they were doing that when it was not going to be allowed on television.
Yeah, and Star Trek, I think, had the first televised interracial kiss.
Yep, it was with between Kirk and Uhura, and they and that was a huge thing, and that almost got them canceled. And the networks were like, you can't show this, And the idea was that since it's family programming, you can't show that. It's like that was considered anti-family programming.
Yeah,
like it's absolutely amazing. Yeah, but that's the world we were at and the world we may be heading back into. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of like the reactions to those kind of things haven't changed much, or at least now it's because people, they call anything that's like has like any kind of change from the status quo, it's like called woke or something like that. And I guess like sometimes there are some films that are like they're doing it more for marketing, like trying to check certain boxes and stuff. But then even though when there's like genuine like reason for there to be a person of color, then sometimes these people just like attack the film just because of that. Like, and they say it's propaganda, it's woke already without even knowing what it's about. But Andor did pretty good because I think like it was focusing more on the story first, and then these people and like their other identities and stuff was like they were seen as like full-fledged characters first.
Okay.
I think is what it did right, because like sometimes they do try to just pander or check a box, and it's not really like authentic representation or stuff like that.
It can be. I mean, it all depends where the story goes. Andor is a perfect example. If they have a wide variety of characters, a wide variety of things, they never really push too hard on any topic, but it's superior writing, regardless of genre. That's one of the best things I've seen on television in 20 years. Yeah. I mean, just wonderful writing. But then you have other science fiction outlets that, they do kind of push everything into one grouping where, I don't know if they do it so much to like you said, check off boxes. I think that there are a lot of public relations firms and a lot of people that do want to do that. And I think that makes story suffer. But I think that, but in general, if it's making someone feel uncomfortable, it's doing its job.
Yeah.
It really does. If art makes you uncomfortable, it's doing its job. And there's the reason why there's so much of these things now is because the same thing we were just talking about with the first interracial kiss. It wasn't allowed on television. So it's not like it's suddenly everything's here and it's being rammed down people's throats and everything has to be this, everything has to be that. It's like, no, it's just that everything isn't being excluded anymore. And therefore, that's making a lot of people very uncomfortable because it's like, yeah, I can accept you as long as I don't have to see you. It's like, that's not acceptance. That's just segregation. And you're just trying to put a smile on it.
Yeah, because like it's like anything, no matter what, even if it's just like, even if it fits the story and there's people of color, like even if it makes like Dune, I don't like there was all these people saying, oh, that's woke because like what did they think the people on Arrakis would look like in a desert? Like of course they'd be darker people. Like
well, our entire species comes from Africa.
Yeah,
and it's like what, they didn't look like us.
Yeah,
I mean, we're a later mutation that's just provable science.
Yeah, it's just the ways of adapting to the different climates and everything.
Right. Yeah, or just what mutation will work. A mutation like me in a desert is not going to work. Whoever had my coloring, if that was a quick mutation in a desert, they're not going to survive long enough to have more of me. It's just it's just that simple. That's how it works. But it's just later mutations where they work someplace else. But if Arrakis is supposed to be like they're there for what 8,000-9,000 years.
Yeah,
humans. And they brought they brought the worms there as aliens. It's like, okay, but what do you think they look like? Right?
Yeah.
But everyone saw the David Lynch movie, and it was made at a time where you would have to have the vast majority of your cast be white because they wouldn't get the backing otherwise. When they shot it in 1983.
Yeah, so that's sometimes I think a lot of these people didn't like read the book. Actually, they just looked at like the older movie and
Yeah,
wanted to, yeah.
yeah, yeah, precisely. Yeah, and the book's awesome. The book is just so. I love the story. I want to see what they do with it
Yep.
next.
Oh yeah,
I,
I've been reading through it recently. Actually, it's really good. Yeah.
nice, nice. I never delved too deeply into the later ones, but I'd like to.
Oh, like
You
about
know.
about the children Dune and all. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah,
Yep. How Paul starts realizing certain realities about himself, and what he's really created. You
yeah.
know.
And I know Star Wars took like a lot of inspiration from that, like with Anakin, like his turn to the dark side.
Absolutely. I mean, there's no way George Lucas didn't read Dune. There's no
Yeah,
way. You know, there's absolutely no way he didn't read that. You know, as someone who was so involved in film in the late '60s and early '70s and like studying it, it's like, yeah, they read Frank Herbert. They just did. You know, it's like saying he didn't read Lord of the Rings. You know, it's like, of course he did. You know, but
yeah.
yeah.
Because I actually I think there was even like a sub race of hobbits that had dark skin, if I'm not mistaken. I forget exactly what they were called.
Oh yeah, I forget.
Yeah,
It's been like 40 years since I read those books too.
the
That's something
Harfoots. The
I should probably.
Harfoots are darker skin. Yeah, and it's just interesting, like how some white nationalists took his work, because like Tolkien was definitely someone of his time, but he, in some ways, he was also like he was very against like the Nazi ideology. I believe he also supported like he was against the apartheid in South Africa. Like he in some ways he was, he was for social justice and like ahead of his time too. Like he definitely wasn't like a white national. Like he was a man of his time in some ways.
Right,
Yeah,
right. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he was against things like that. Like I think any rational person would be, you know, regardless of where you were brought up or what age you were. I think a rational person would say,
yeah,
yeah, this is at best unsustainable because it goes against nature, and at worst, well, what it is. So
yeah.
you
Plus,
know,
like I know he fought in World War I, and I almost feel like, and he was alive for World War II too. So I almost feel like the Mordor was kind of representative of like Germany and like World War II in a way, like going around creating like a world war. I know in some ways they say it like it was like a stereotype of like the Mongols too, though.
right? He blended everything. The man was brilliant.
Yeah.
And interesting, he never really left his home. Like he never like his hometown. Like he
Oh,
never traveled anywhere. So he lived in his head. So all the things he imagined were all in his mind, and he was just this rich imagination. He never
yeah,
had to go anywhere because he lived in Middle Earth, you know.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, he wrote The Hobbit in the '30s, and then he wrote the rest of them in the '50s. So it's yeah, it makes sense. You know, you can't live in England and go through World War II and not understand what almost came to destroy you, what almost succeeded in destroying the planet. You know, so yeah, I'm positive. I mean, I don't know the history of what he was thinking or what he did, but I am positive you can't live through that and not expand your worldview and your fictional writing to
yeah,
include those kinds of themes, even if it's not a direct correlation. There's no way you can do it. There's no
yeah.
way.
Well,
There's
and
no way.
seeing the reality of war himself, like being in World War I. Like,
Right,
so,
right, right. Yeah, I've never served, but I've known a lot of people who have gone into combat, and not one of them wants to go back.
yeah, yeah. It's
I've never
always
met.
it's
Yeah,
always
I've
like
never
the
met. Yeah.
armchair people saying, "Rah, let's go to war. Let's go to war." Like,
Yes, yes, it is. Every single person I know that's fought in a war has never said, "I can't wait for the next one."
yeah,
I mean, I can. It's not never been my experience. You know, I've never met a Vietnam vet that wants to go back. I never met anyone. Never met that person in my life to this
yeah.
day.
It's because we're so like in the U.S. we're kind of distanced from it. So like talking about it from a distance, people don't see the reality of it. They don't see.
Yeah, we're extremely insulated from the realities of it. That's why when we are attacked on this soil, it's like it's almost unheard of. We can't relate to it. You know, everywhere else in the world pretty much can, but
Yeah,
we don't understand it. You know, that's how safe and insulated we are for the
yeah,
most
yeah. That's why we had to have like that's why we had like a memorial of it and everything 9/11, but like other places they have that like every day. So
Yeah. Yeah. So, yep.
yeah. And yeah, I feel like, do you feel like art, like there's a duty to kind of question times, or like reflect the times with art? I mean, I know there's not like one rule fits all, but like I think
Right.
in general, like art is the place to kind of make you question things and look outside the norms of the society and all that.
Yeah, I don't like telling other artists what they should be doing, how they should be creating. I, I there are people who purposely pull away from that, and I understand why. But I think you kind of miss out. I think you do yourself a disservice if you don't at least try to explore some part of it. If you're living in a certain time and you don't explore that in your art, whether it's painting or sculpture or dance or writing or music or whatever it is, if you're not exploring the world around you and not reflecting it back and maybe giving your opinion of it, it's like you're kind of missing out. Not a requirement, but you're kind of missing out, and that's I encourage anyone in any kind of creative endeavor, look at the world around you, speak your truth to it, especially if you're speaking truth to power. I mean, speak and show what you feel and show why you feel it.
Yeah, and I don't. This isn't necessarily a spoiler for Andor, but what you said earlier kind of got me thinking about the character Cyril, because he kind of represents like the average person who kind of is just conditioned and thinks everything about his society is good and doesn't question things. Like
Right.
he wasn't necessarily evil from the start, but he was just kind of indoctrinated into the Empire's good and what they're doing is right. But then the end, when he sees something horrific they do, then he's disillusioned. He's like, oh, this is his whole like world falls apart. And
He's a suit. I've I had this discussion with other people about like what Cyril represents, and again, not to go into spoilers and things, but um, I Cyril isn't evil.
yeah,
Cyril is the ultimate patriot. Cyril loves the Empire. He loves the order of it. He loves the force of it, of going and creating order, because he was controlled from day one by the mother character, and and that was an allure to him. The things he didn't have in his life. Wow, I can go out and be a part of something because she's told me I'm going to be nothing
mm-hmm.
without her and without someone constantly taking care of me. But look at what these people are doing. They're fighting for themselves and they're being assertive and they're doing these things. And that is like, red, white, and blue. He's seen it through a flag his whole life. And but he's also intelligent enough to know that when he does see it, when he finally does see it,
yeah,
it is, you can see, and the actor is brilliant. I think
yeah. He
him
really showed
him
it.
him, him and the woman that plays Dedra, the two of them together are just, they're
Yeah,
phenomenal actors.
yeah.
And
And Dedra was the same way. Like she had no like family or anything, and then but the Empire
right,
kind of gave her meaning. Yeah,
right, yeah, she had no choice.
yeah,
I mean, she was programmed from what, the age of like 5 or 6 to be what she was, and knew no other. If all you're told is one thing from the time you're 5 years old, and you never see another version of truth,
yeah,
when you're 40, you have 35 years of absolutely knowing the truth, you
yeah,
know? And even when but it also affects her too, as you see later in the show. But it's like, but the serial character, I mean, I think it was performed brilliantly and it was written beautifully. And it was just such a wondrous thing to see, because it would be so easy just to make them evil and, it's like, and they're not that. They're just people. To make them like superior evil and supernatural evil and stereotypical like that, it's like, no, they just show them as regular people with a lot of problems, a hell of a lot of problems. And again, that always goes back to the basis is superior writing,
yeah,
and then given to the hands of a director who can mold it, and in this case, they're the same person, and actors who can bring those people to life in their own way. That's even more than what's on the written page. You know,
Yeah,
and that's what I love when I do films. I love seeing people do that, taking my scripts and going.
it kind
That's
of
why
becomes their own, like the character becomes their own kind of.
it has to. It has to. And people have asked me, like, why I've worked with the same kind of people, the same people in so many different projects, and I'm just like, because I see them. I see them, and I'm just like, I know exactly what they'll do with this one thing or that thing, or I know exactly what they're going to do with it, and then they give me something even more. Just a completely other.
Yeah.
Perfect example are this someone we both know for Wiley Weeks.
A while weeks, yeah. I believe he. If I thought I saw. Is he still around?
No, he just passed away a couple months ago.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he was in my last film, and I just loved working with him, and I'm glad I did when I had the opportunity. I'm glad that I did when I had the chance to do that because yeah, he went to a film festival in Texas and showed our film, and 2 nights later he was gone.
Oh wow.
And he was a riot of a man.
That was an Identity Check, or
that was for another film I did called Dad's New Roommate. So Dad's New Roommate is 80-year-old Vietnam vet who comes back from the war, and he's kind of grizzled and he's kind of pissed off, and he winds up having 3 children. And the children, he's raising them with his wife, they soften him and they make him more politically correct, and they make him more accepting of other people and different cultures and races and things like that. And his wife passes away, and he says, well, I'm to use the word, I'm woke. So I know I'm going to do what all the kids are doing now. And he goes on Craigslist to get a roommate. So the film is the family coming back to his house, and the film is the intervention of them trying to talk him out of it.
Oh, so it wasn't a sci-fi movie you did then?
It is a sci-fi movie.
Oh, it is? Oh,
that's
okay.
mostly what I write. So it's a sci-fi dramedy, we've been calling it, because it's got a lot of comedic elements. It's got a sci-fi, it's got a drama base, but it's also got science fiction elements that become more apparent as the film goes on. But so the family comes back and they're trying to talk him out of going ahead with this, and they're right and he's right, and everyone is there because they love each other, but they're also not communicating, they're not listening, and finally when they start to, that's when just things get a little out of control. But
yeah, and it's also commentary, like through art. It's like a way to get people to listen when they wouldn't otherwise listen, because and look at the Rod Sterling, like the reason why he told so many things about the times and everything through like the sci-fi and everything, was because it was a way to bypass the censorship and like show these things without.
Yep.
Yeah. And there was like the Academy, the class of '99 were like about the critique the authoritarian regime, and there was a lot. I remember there was also the one about like the Eye of the Beholder, like where where they're like, oh, she has this, they have her face covered, and like, oh, she has they keep saying she has a hideous face and stuff, but then at the end you see that all the people around her are these pig people, and like she's like a classical beauty and all that, and then it was like, oh, the beauty's the eye of the beholder, which was not really like a political comedy, but like a social commentary.
Absolutely, social commentary. Yeah, and the reactions are great. The first time I saw that, I was a little kid. I remember just being like, "What's wrong with her?" And also you see everybody else.
Yeah,
and that there's one nurse that sees her, just like she gasps, like she recoils from her, like she's so hideous to them. It's like, and in their world, like, well, you have to go and live with these other people now because like you live with your own kind because you're too upsetting to the perfect people. You're too upsetting to us. And yeah. that's a wonderful thing. How they got that on TV, I don't know at the time, because that's even something today, like people cutting themselves to look like Kylie Jenner. It's like, what the hell is that about? But it's the same principle. 60 years later, it's still the same principle. Like who are you and what do you think beauty is?
Yeah, like having to live up to an ideal, like on the TV and everything. Yeah.
But yeah, Sterling was a master of that. He'd written so many of those scripts, and Richard Matheson wrote scripts in them, and just these wonderful writers that had these great ideas, and that was a great place for them to all come together. I don't know if there's something like maybe Black Mirror today, something like that, but like anthologies are like to write those kinds of stories and get them produced. I mean, we need that again. You know, we don't necessarily have to call it Twilight Zone again because they keep restarting that and it keeps not really working as well.
Yeah, well, Black Mirror in some ways is kind of like the modern Twilight Zone. It's had, I mean, like the earlier seasons at least. Like I know, the later ones I kind of fell off, but like the earlier ones,
right.
like that one where they're all kind of like in this thing where they're running on the bikes, and then the only way to get out was through this game show, and then the one guy tries to rebel, but then he ends up winning the game show thing that gets him out, and he becomes like a star that does that as an act, like, oh, he's rebelling against this. So it's like they even took his rebellion and marketed it.
Right.
Like from what I remember of that episode, yeah.
I haven't seen that one. That sounds great.
Yeah, it was with the guy from Get Out. It was one of the early ones.
Oh, wow. Cool.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. And Jordan Peele was another one I wanted to mention because I know he's used horror to make a lot of social commentary, like with Get Out.
Absolutely. And that's a disturbing film. But like there's a movie out right now called Black Eyed Susan, and if you have a chance to see it, it's a rough watch. I'm telling you right now, it's a rough movie. And Scooter McCrae directed it. I saw it in a festival in upstate New York. It's called Black Eyed Susan, and it's about a company that is making AI-based robots for people who have violent tendencies.
So, like, they can take out their violence on the robot?
It becomes much more than that, and it's deeply disturbing. But I think that if we had that technology, that's precisely what would be going on in the world today. I think absolutely that would be going on.
And that was another thing that Black Mirror explored was like, does the like AI, does it have feelings or consciousness? Because I remember there was this one episode where this gamer programmer guy, like, he takes these people from work, his coworkers, and made like AI versions of them just so he could torture them in like a virtual world.
Damn.
But they were like coded things, like they weren't real, but they were code. But they could, at the same time, they could feel and so it's like, even though they were artificial, like, was that still like harming a being? Like, could AI ever get to that where it's conscious? Or, you know,
I don't know. I don't. I think that's a whole other question. What is sentience? You know, I explore that in a couple of my different scripts, and I love the idea of what actually is artificial intelligence, and what are you? What at what point do rights come into play?
Yeah.
This was explored in Star Trek. It was explored in my film Impervia. I love the idea of this. I have a script out right now that I'm trying to get produced, and it goes into this. It goes into this, and also the idea of, well, once you have this AI, what if it's not who you think it was? Like, if you have a kid, you can raise your kid to be a certain way, but the kid's always going to be the kid. It's always going to be an individual person.
So, like, what if the AI rebels, or like it doesn't, like, what if it goes against us?
Or what if it's just not who you think it is?
Yeah.
You know, like, what if you're making one thing something else, and it's not through your programming because it's just how it is.
So it ends up doing something like you don't expect, like acting in a way you don't expect,
or feeling in a way you don't expect.
Yeah.
You know, or thinking in a way you don't expect, or it's like, this is not what we programmed. It's like, yeah, but regardless of what you programmed, this is what this is now. So what do you do? If you can erase it, but if it's a program, you can erase it. But then what are you really doing? You know, what is this thing here? When I was in college, I had a philosophy course about artificial. This was a long time ago, the beginnings of artificial intelligence, And I brought up the episode of Star Trek where Data, who's an android, as a sentient android, makes a sentient daughter android. So now we have an artificial intelligence with feelings making an artificial intelligence with feelings.
That's in Next Generation, right? The one with Picard and Patrick Stewart, right?
Yes. And it doesn't work, and there's too many complex problems. So his daughter is trying to work out who she is in the universe, being 3 days old, and he is not a human either, so he doesn't really know, and he can't tell her.
But he has self-awareness.
Yeah.
I guess that's the only time it would be. It would seem like it would be ethical to give AI rights if they were able to be conscious and self-aware.
Right. Sentience is the key to it. It's the most important thing, and I think that beyond biological life, that's what really, because then they can tell you, like cats and dogs and other animals, they may be self-aware. We're not aware of them being self-aware.
Yeah.
If I've had a couple of cats in my life, and I don't think they know that one day they're going to die. I don't know if they know that. If they are, they've never communicated that to us. Maybe they tell each other.
They don't have the same fear of death, at least it seems, that humans do. Yeah.
No, I mean they have survival instinct, but they don't. But the idea of worrying about when they're going to happen, that's a concept that comes with self-awareness.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's living things out there except for us that we know of on this planet, at least.
I believe dolphins. When I looked into it, I might have said I think they recognize themselves in reflections and stuff like that. I know dolphins are apparently very smart in that way.
There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of animals that are like that. I mean, I've spent a tiny bit of time around octopuses, and I'm like, they're brilliant. They're absolutely brilliant. But I don't know if they know life is finite, or have thoughts on that, those dolphins saying, "Hey, I'm really glad that I got to see myself because I am 12 now and I'm not going to really live, another 30, 40 years. So, how long dolphins live."
Yeah, how would they wouldn't know how long they're going to live or
right, that kind of thing. I don't, I don't know if there's some kind of instinct level thing telling them certain things. They'll know when they're in pain. They know when they're hurting. They know when they feel sick, but they don't. It's kind of this is a weird sensation, but of course it's going to go on because I'll live forever. Because everything lives forever. It's okay, but I don't know. And if you have that with an artificial intelligence that could conceivably be immortal as long as it has power, as long as it can stay, in charge somehow, then, you really have made a self-aware, immortal being, which is also a problem, and they explored that in Blade Runner. That's where they had incept dates and they had death dates.
And they weren't allowed to live past a certain date,
right? Yeah, because they can live forever.
And then I like that robot, that android's monologue at the end where he talks about all the stuff he got to see. But now it's gone. He talked about the short, brief life he had and everything he saw and experienced. Yeah, I think that's a famous monologue he has at the end.
Oh yeah,
tears in the rain. Tears in the rain.
Yeah, all these memories will be lost in time. Yeah. That's that's a brilliant thing. It was written one way, and he improvised a lot of that. So that was the actor taking the script and changing it into something beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And I've actually got a picture on my wall right here of him, and he wrote that on my picture. Of all things, I'm looking at him right now. But that's a great scene at the end, because then it's well, what was he?
Yeah, and Blade Runner is based off the Philip K. Dick book, Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which pretty much in the title, that's all about, are androids self-aware?
Right.
Are they? Right. And the book, from what I remember, was a little more silly, I think, than the movie. It was had more of a because they were all the electric sheep was the symbol of status. That you moved up if you were able to buy electric animals or electric. Yeah.
Yeah, it was definitely not the film noir like detective kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like it's that that was a later creation. They did the narration on top of it and everything else. But yeah, but
He's definitely an important one though to mention, like as far as like social political commentary with like through sci-fi and fiction.
right.
Philip K. Dick. Because like I know he did a lot of his stuff covered. Minority Report, I think, was originally his too, and yeah. And, Man
There's
in the High Castle. That was like if the Germans and Japanese won World War II. As an alternate, yeah,
that's interesting. Then we're getting into Man in the High Castle stuff, and
yeah,
that's a whole other. Oof.
yeah,
If you've ever seen that series, watch that series. That's
yeah.
oof, that's up there. Um, who I really love. If you never read her, is Ursula Le Guin.
Okay,
She has a number of different books. My favorite is a thing called The Lathe of Heaven. It's a guy that it's a futuristic world where everything is kind of run by the state. So he goes to a state approved psychiatrist because he's having these bad dreams, and he goes to the psychiatrist and says, "Listen, the problem is that what I dream actually happens." So the guy's like, "Okay, shit, he's far gone." So he schedules him for more therapy sessions, and then it turns out that he's telling the truth.
hmm.
So if you have a knowledge of someone that can bend reality, do you help them or do you exploit them?
Yeah.
And that's where the story dives into what the next steps of this thing is. Once you could do a little bit, can you do a little more? Can you do a little more? You
Yeah.
know?
So basically,
And
like it could be used for good or bad. It's like how you use it.
yeah, or how you manipulate the person who has the ability when you don't have it yourself.
Hmm.
So it's a whole other thing. I was like 11 or 12 when I saw the movie version, and I went and read the book, and the book's even more complex. But she was a wonderful writer. She died a couple of years ago. She was an incredible writer. Um, she had another book that dealt with a futuristic version of the UN sending delegates to different planets, and one delegate winds up on a planet where everyone is gender neutral except for certain times when they can either be male or female.
Hmm.
So you can be both in your life. So if you want to raise a family, you spend most of your time being neither.
So was that a way of exploring, I guess, kind of like gender, being fluid, that whole
Mm-hmm.
idea?
Yeah, I think at the time she wrote it in the late '60s, so I
Yeah,
think she was mostly talking about gender equality, and I think that the way she did that was saying, what if there was a blank slate and everyone could be either one,
yeah,
right? Would we still have the same kind of gender inequality? But it's also, and now it's more of a, she was really seeing some other kind of future where this would be transsexual rights would be an actual debated thing, and it's
yeah.
like, well, there's
Long
no,
before it was really talked about or no. Yeah,
it was hidden, it wasn't talked about. There was like Christine Jorgensen, everyone knew about that, and don't talk about it. And meanwhile, transsexual people have been in human society forever, and
yeah.
this is known about
And that,
since
who knows,
the
that could
beginning of
even
history.
we don't know if she could have had something she was dealing with that was expressed through that. Who knows?
Very well could have been,
Yeah,
very well could have been, or at least something that she was concerned about,
yeah,
for others. But however it manifested, but yeah, but in that world, it's so interesting because there are people who then decide they're going to pick one sex and stay that sex forever, and they're looked upon as perverts
really.
because they chose one over the other, and
And what was
that's
the name of this
unnatural.
again? I wrote it.
It's called The Left Hand of Darkness,
Okay, right.
and Ursula Le Guin is the author. That book changed me. Like I read that and I was like, I've never read anything written like this, and I'm like, this is amazing. I always knew she was good, but I was like, I finally read that one. I'm like, holy hell, But she was writing about these issues in 1969. So
Yeah.
it's like, so talk about sci-fi writers seeing the future.
Yeah. And I was just thinking like how people take things and kind of apply them to their own bias sometimes, even if it doesn't fit. Like, because 1984, George Orwell, like I think his messaging in that was pretty clear. But like sometimes I see like the far right and people that I don't think Orwell would have supported. Like they keep saying, "Oh, that's Orwellian. This is Orwellian." They say, but they kind of hijack it for their own, to fit their own bias. Even though Orwell was like a socialist, I think his whole life. Even though he didn't like Stalinism, which is more what 1984 was a critique of, but he was like very anti-fascist too. So.
It's extremely so, because he was around through a lot of it. He was in Spain during a lot of it. He saw these things, and I mean, all you have to do is read 84, or you read Animal Farm. I mean, Animal Farm is a perfect example of what this is, and about absolute power corrupting absolute.
Well, Animal Farm was also showing like how whatever system takes over then can just be just corrupt, even if it seems like it's the solution to that.
Yep. And the erasure of history. The animals get together and they write the rules on the side of the barn. But then the ones in charge, they start writing. The different ones say it was always like that. Yeah. And they get enough people to say, yeah, it was always like that. We didn't have those other rules. It was these rules all along. It's like, okay, yeah.
Well, and that's like someone like who's pretty known today that's saying like, oh, he doesn't want anything that's critical of American history in schools, or he wants to change. He wants it to be pro-American curriculum and all that.
Pro very white American with white lies instead of history. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. but yeah. So that no one's uncomfortable. No one's ever uncomfortable. It's like, okay, well, that's not history. That's fairy. That's fairy tales. That's not. That's a complete fabrication.
Yeah, and that's like how what these people say, like the saying the apolitical, like wanting to apolitical art, or like really it's just like when it's politics that they see that they're against, like where they see themselves being criticized, or they see a group being represented or empathized with that they don't approve of.
Right.
But they don't know, like they forget, they're just looking at history the way they want to look at it, like, but there's always been art like this challenge
absolutely
these things in the status quo.
Absolutely there is, and there always should be. I can't say there always will be, because I have no idea what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone 100 years from now. But there always should be. There always should be a voice saying, no, I disagree, and this is why. And show your truth. That's what art has to be.
Yeah. More like artists see the world a different way a lot, usually, because usually it's not like the average like normie isn't gonna like create like a art. Like usually somebody who kind of sees the world a little bit differently, so they're able to look outside like the typical biases and stuff and help. Like then it's like a mirror,
right? Yeah. I mean, there is a different mentality of thinking. Like like everyone has their own problems, everyone has their own shortcomings and strengths, things like that. People ask me a lot, like, what do you do when you're bored? And I have to be honest, I haven't experienced boredom in almost a quarter of a century. Like, I haven't spent a moment's bored in the last, like, maybe 25 years. Because there's always something to think about. There's always something to create. There's always something to contemplate or rethink. Yeah. Or
and you have multiple outlets too, right? Like you acting behind the camera and music.
Yeah. I've been something you and I have talked about before. I'm scoring my own films now, and that's something that I was reluctant to do. So I hadn't been a musician in a very long time. I was reluctant to do it, but now that I'm going back into that, it's like, like in my last film I scored myself, and my next one that we're shooting in February, I'm going to be scoring that as well. In addition to another film that I'm shooting for someone else, that I'm directing for someone else in September. So I'm going to be scoring that, as far as I know I am. But yes, with multiple things, like I am an actor and I am a director, and I write, and I'm a script consultant, and I do a lot of things. And in my day-to-day life, I count, money for billionaires and multimillionaires, and so it's like, yeah, there's always something to think about. There's always, I don't understand like how people can be bored, because it's like it's always something. Like, pick up a pencil and draw something for 3 hours. Like, you're not going to be bored. You may not like what you did. It may not, you may not be able to sell it, but you created something, and that way you're not thinking about what the hell to do next, or but yeah, I can't even remember what that feeling is like, but it does take a different kind of mentality of it, and I kind of fell into it. It's not something I like said, I'm never going to be bored again. It's like I kind of fell into that, I'm just like, well, I like how this is going. This works for me. So
yeah, I don't think I've like, I feel like that's most creative people, like me. I have different outlets, but I don't think I've ever met a creative person that doesn't have like more than one outlet, even if one outlet's like their main focus. Like even David Lynch, I just thought of like, he passed away, I think it was like a year ago now or so, but like he was mainly a movie maker, but before that he was an artist.
Yep.
Like doing sculptures, and he did music too. Like he released an album, I think like maybe 10 years ago or so, like before he died. Yeah. He did music too. Yeah.
It's and the disciplines are all the same. Like you can't be the best actor and the best musician, the best sculptor and the best world traveler, and but those disciplines tie into each other. They do complement each other. If you can write, I'm not saying if you write poetry, it's like like what's every Bruce Springsteen song? It's poetry. Yeah. You can just read his lyric sheets and not even think about the songs, and it's just beautiful poetry.
Yeah. What was that monologue at the end of Blade Runner was poetry. Yeah.
that came from partially from writers, and partially from the mind of that wonderful actor. Who's just was a I got to meet him that one time. What a wonderful, nice man. Genuine guy. And that was yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I guess we talked a bit about like horror and sci-fi being like a safe zone, because like how it was safe for like Rob Sterling during the time when there's more censorship. And also, I guess some people took Dawn of the Dead to be like a take on consumerism, like the zombies too. Like,
absolutely.
I guess I'm trying to think. Like, I guess does it ever? Because I know it could be like good allegories, but like, does it? Do you think it changed minds, art, or is it just more to like reflect the times, or do you think does it make any kind of change in the world? I know we talked about how art can reflect, but like, can art also like make a change in some way? Do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you. There's so many examples. I'll give you one. If you've ever read, people have seen like this TV series of The Stand, or they've seen like the recent series of The Stand.
Oh, years ago, yeah.
The book is over 1,400 pages long, and to sit and read I've read the whole damn thing, and I've done the Dark Tower series from book one, all the associated ones. So when you do it in order, it's over 15,000 pages. It took me 4 years, 3.5, 4 years to do it. But I went in order, the way he was like, he wanted them to be told. But you read the Stand, and it's like, what if you don't have a strong feeling about what side you'd be on in that situation, then you just wasted 1,400 pages. Like, if that doesn't change you, that story, and say, yeah, this is who I am, and this is what I can see, and I get what was trying to be done here. Like, if that doesn't make you feel something, it's like, I don't know what else to tell you. But there are many things, a great example of art that is based in reality, but and I just talked about this in my script group, the Band of Brothers series. If you watch that, and yes, it's Hollywoodized, and yes, it's changed from the real, but they also interview the real guys, and it is based on the things these people really did and really experienced. And if that doesn't give you an appreciation for what these young men went through, what these soldiers went through. I don't know what possibly could. Like I saw that series. I've watched it 5 times, and over the course of my life, I've watched it 5 times in completion. It changed me, and I had relatives that fought in that war, and I didn't fully understand, until I saw that. Now it's still my own understanding of it is, based through a camera lens. I can't know what any of them did, but it definitely changed my perspective in certain ways and made me respect them even more. So it all comes down to the individual, but I think that art can absolutely, when it's reflected and shown back to you in a way that is digestible, like you said, when Sterling did that, like he said, well, I can't get this, if I make it a fictional and tell them it's fiction, they're going to put it on the TV, and people saw those things and they knew, there's a Twilight Zone with Jack Klugman, where he gets a notification. He's not a good guy. His character's a bad guy.
Yeah.
And he gets notification that his son was injured in a war, and he's reading this telegram, and he's like, well, what's going on? He goes, my son, he's in some place called Vietnam, and he's dying, and I'm here. Like, what? What am I supposed to do with that? But I just love the idea that it was going on then, and it was just starting. A lot of people in America didn't hear about Vietnam yet. They didn't know about it. It was just some kind of weird policing thing that we're doing because it's communists and screw the communists, and But
and then it evolved into like a massive protest. But I think the main thing was like seeing the footage. That's what got people enraged. Like, yeah,
absolutely. Or when they saw the people coming back, and it's like there's no parade, there's no rah rah, we did it. It's they came back and they're changed, and it's still going on, and they're sending more men. They're sending more teenagers, and that was a whole other thing too. But in the fictional world, it's like that's, I think a lot of people saw that Twilight Zone episode and said, what the hell is Vietnam? And I'm sure people watched that and thought they were making up like some fictional place. Yeah. There wasn't someplace people talked about, but yeah, so I think that can definitely, in the idea of like art influencing people. Yeah. I remember being a kid watching that episode, thinking like, how didn't they know about Vietnam? And it's like, oh wait, yeah, that's right. This is the beginning of that. So he even in the fiction, he was able to put real terms and name them.
Yeah, he was able to
kind of make up the name.
Yeah,
he said it. He said it, and that that pissed a lot of people off.
Yeah,
and that's also the mark of a good writer.
Yeah,
he definitely was one, and yeah, I mean, just getting away with things, there's the famous story of a different kind of art. The Monkees back in the 60s, the TV show The Monkees. They said, listen, whatever to the writers who actually wrote the music and everything, whatever you're doing, you cannot mention the war. You can't mention Vietnam. You can't talk about the conflict. So they wrote a song called Last Train to Clarksville, which seems like it's like this guy's like missing his girlfriend. He's missing his girlfriend because he's going off to be trained to be a soldier to go off to Vietnam. And the last line of the chorus is, I don't know if I'm ever coming home. And it was, and they sold it as a, he hopes to see his girl again. It's like, yeah, because he's going to get shot in Vietnam. And it was
so they used it as a way to like criticize the war without like openly.
Right. Yeah. Right. Without pointing the finger or anything, just the reality of, here's a young guy who's given up his life and he has no idea if he's going to see his friends and his family and his girl again. That's all. That's up in the air. But they disguised it as this little love story. It's a nice little happy little jingle.
Yeah.
If you don't know the song, look it up. It's like you would never believe it's about Vietnam, but it is.
Yeah. And with Andor, like I don't want to spoil too much because it's still like relatively new, but like
I've been like
yeah. but like he definitely, I feel like, pointed to some things going on in the world indirectly that he would have gotten more backlash for speaking about. Like he didn't admit that these were parallels to things going on, but they just obviously were. Like, and I think he did it in he was it was brilliant how it was handled too. But like, it was definitely a lot of like parallels to current things going on in Andor. So
Absolutely. And what I think is so cool about it is that it's never not Star Wars.
yeah,
Like no part of it, no matter how extreme they get with it, it was always still Star Wars. Like it wasn't just like the clothing or the setting; it was still like a Star Wars project, and that must have been so friggin' hard to balance that out. Like I can't to be able to walk that line and really tell your story, but still make it poignant to the actual history and the canon of what's been going on since 1977. You know,
yeah,
like to meld it into that and all those other properties too. They had to blend it into the
yeah.
cartoon series
And
and Rebel
it
series and
enhances like the originals too. It's like there's all this other context.
so much so,
Yeah,
so much so. And which is why now it's like I say, like an Andor, Rogue One, the original Star Wars. It's like put them all together, and it's like, yeah, that's the movie.
yeah,
Everything else is kind of really cool afterwards, but that was the movie,
yeah,
you know. But yeah, it's the parallels are too close. The uh, the propaganda wars.
yeah. Dehumanizing that one group, the Gormans. I
Yeah,
won't say too much about it, but like, yeah,
exactly.
yeah,
And they even say it like when they're having that one meeting, like those two PR guys, they're like, have you ever noticed like that they do seem like they're a little bit better than us. They always have this kind of attitude. It's like, have you noticed that like in the last 5 or 6 years? It's like, yeah, because we've been telling people that shit. We've been making it very subtle. Hey, you know how they are. It's like, no, I don't. But if enough people hear it, eventually it becomes this normal thing.
yeah.
You know?
And it's just because like people can like see it like from the outside in a movie, but they can't always see it like in real time because I like propaganda like like it takes a while I think of like really like hearing other perspectives and like do also like introspection and just like kind of deconditioning I guess is the word to really see how much propaganda affects you or like how certain things I used to think like oh that isn't anything that actually came from my experience that was just like a stereotype that was fed to me from like
Yeah,
the media that was just it takes a while to unlearn those things so people don't always see it
yeah,
right away and like I think I saw something like people always know the resistance is the good guys in the movie but they don't see it in reality.
they don't see it in reality. It's like yeah, the rebels. Oh, yeah, I'm back in the back. Oh, what do you mean? Oh, no. We do as we're told. It's like, okay, that's
Yeah,
great, but you do understand like what side you're actually on now. Like you spent your whole life watching this.
yeah. And I think that's what like Cyril is like he's kind of like the average person that thinks they're the good guy but they're really buying the propaganda of the empire.
Yeah, they do that great with the mother character too. Again, not to give away too much, but when he's like, she's like, oh, I know what's going on there, and he's like, I'm literally living on this planet. I'm telling you, it doesn't exist. And she's like, oh, you can't lie to me.
Yeah.
It's like, but I'm here. Like, I look out my window and I'm telling you, it's not going to happen. She goes, no, I saw it on TV. It's happening. I know better. You can't fool me. It's like,
Yeah,
oh,
she was like it's like a boomer kind of. I guess.
yeah, serious hardcore boomer. That was bad. But like
So, would you say dystopian fiction is warning us, or is it describing like what's already happening?
I think it's a healthy dose of both. I think that if it's not somewhat based in what we can see and feel now, it's too easy to dismiss it as pure fiction, and like that's something we got to worry about then. If it's presented in a way where yeah, that could be a future, but you see the seeds of it now, you know, um, yeah, then it has to be rooted in something we're kind of feeling is potential now or really happening now, and then expand on that, and then excuse me, let's amplify that, completely amplify that, and and that's how you get the hook. So it's like, yeah, I'm seeing this too. I am seeing this too. I am understanding this, and oh yeah, okay, yeah, I can see where that was going. As opposed to something completely far fetched that like, okay, that's be interesting if that ever happened, but it can't possibly happen here. you know?
Yeah, and then sometimes there's things that kind of reoccur too, like rise of authoritarian regimes. It could be applied to so many things, and then you see the seeds, and then but then it's like people don't. It's just interesting how many people don't catch it in like real time, like seeing like the demon, like this the basic things, like the demonization of the other, the playing off emotions and simplistic things, no, the lack of nuance. Like I just don't see how people like don't see it in real time, like when it's there, but they can see it through the outside, like through a fictional film or looking at another period
Right.
in history. But when it's happening in real time, like so many people are just blind to it.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing, because the farther you're removed from the last time something's happened, the more fictional it seems. When I was in college, there was when I was working on my anthropology degree, there was a course that was called Philosophy of the Holocaust, and I made the mistake of taking this at 8 a.m. on Monday mornings. So I start my week with, with this, and it was a wonderful course. I think everyone should learn as much about the Holocaust as they possibly can. I think that the danger, they always say never forget, so the danger is forgetting the realities of that. But the professor said, I need you all to understand something. Hitler wasn't a monster. Hitler was just a man. And this one kid got up and he lost his shit. And he was like, how dare you say that he wasn't demonic and sent from the devil? And he goes, he wasn't. He was a guy. And this kid stormed out. Like, he couldn't take the course. He just left. But it's true because he was just a guy. He was just one guy. But he was able to talk enough shit to enough people to convince them, and then they could convince others. But he wasn't the devil, and he wasn't an alien, and he wasn't a monster, and he wasn't this evil creation. He was a person who did evil things. And that's the scariest shit in the world. People don't want to talk about that. They want, so the farther you're away from that, it's like, oh, you'll bring up Hitler. Oh yeah, sure, so is Hitler. It's like, yeah, but because that wasn't even 100 years ago. And he was just a guy, a pretty nondescript guy in the beginning.
Yeah, they didn't even really like take him seriously at first. He was kind of a joke, but he latched on to like an anger that was there. He latched on to like the current,
and he saw what he could do with it. And other people, it's not just him. Other people around him did it, but he was the figurehead of it, and he was the driving force. Because he had whatever the hell came out of his shell. Because they said he was mustard gas, and then that kind of thing can absolutely damage the brain. And they didn't know.
Well, that's how Hitler got how he was.
Yeah, because he was. It's like whatever he was always feeling. The chemical alteration and damage to his brain did that switch of what I feel and the crazy shit that I was raised with is now reality, and therefore I have to make this reality the reality for everyone. It's a theory.
And then people were like, and then people were angry and they kind of latched onto that, and like they found a scapegoat.
Yeah. And it could be anything. I always said if we all looked exactly the same way, we're all the same height, the same look, the same color, same everything, we would look for people who had connected lobes or disconnected lobes, and those would be the two tribes of humans. Like, all those single lobe people, we know how they are. it would be some crazy stupid shit, like the webbing of your thumb is like it's bigger than mine. Well, you guys are those small guys. It would be something like that. And if it made money for someone and put them in power, it would be something, because then they could talk about that. And then there'd be cartoons about people's ears, and it's like, whatever the thing would be, whatever that other is.
And that's like I read this thing that said that it's good to humanize the villains, not because we're like rooting for them, but because to make people understand that given the circumstances, you could become the villain.
Precisely. There are no supernatural monsters in our history. Everyone who acted monstrously was just another human.
I think that's what I know. Joker was a controversial film, but I think in some ways that's what it was showing. Like Joker was just some guy, like he was like some crazy guy, and then like he evolved into the.
He was a very deeply disturbed person who found the outlet, found his particular outlet. David Berkowitz did the same thing. He found his outlet.
Yeah.
It's like he wasn't the devil. He wasn't an ogre. He was just a guy from Queens. I'm a guy from Queens. It's like,
yeah. But I guess you could say like maybe some people are more, because like I feel like some people are born like without empathy, or but like maybe like sometimes there are people that are like more evil than others, and then the people who are kind of influenced by them are more like the serials who buy into the propaganda. Right. Like Hitler could be like the Palpatine, and then Cyril is all the Germans who bought propaganda and thought he was helping Germany.
Yeah, I mean, it's easy to look at a Palpatine though, because a Palpatine guy is like, it's like that is a supernatural creature.
Yeah.
That is a force infused demonic super being.
Well, I guess Anakin was a little more human because he starts out as just like a regular kid.
Right, but he's also like these superhuman. Like these are people that they can command magic.
Yeah.
The Harry Potter world.
Yeah.
But I understand the allegory. But it's just an important thing to know that it's these are just people, and that's the scary thing, and people can't accept that. But that's just I'm not a fan of the current administration, but I don't believe any of them are demonic. I don't think that there's like winged animals, infusing their brains and stuff.
He was just a reality TV star, and like a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot. I think there's a lot of mental abuse and a lot of mental issues going on there. But which I don't know if they're his fault or not. But there's a lot going on, and there are people that are born without empathy. There are complete sociopaths, and it's very unfortunate. There are people that are born with these hunters mentalities, like these horrible tendencies that is not really in their control. And it's just a randomness of how
their brain
chemistry works. Yeah. It's just a randomness of if you look at every serial killer that's ever been known, like who are their parents? Their parents are just regular people. I mean, Hitler's parents were just regular people.
Yeah, I think that was like Jeffrey Dahmer was like, "Don't blame my parents." They didn't.
Yeah. I mean, do they contribute to that kind of shit? Well, yeah, but it's not.
Yeah, because I know some of them are like severely abused, but others aren't.
Right. So it's in general, people are just people, and it's these weird various things that we have to contend with. And there's 8.5 billion of us, and 8.5 billion makeups. Kind of crazy to think about, but
Yeah. And I guess what topics do you want to explore with your future work?
Well, I mean, it's interesting when we did Dad and Your Roommate. One of the topics was the fear of the unknown, fear of the other, because they're afraid of someone coming in, moving into the parents' house and living there and abusing the father or taking advantage. And it's like, but you don't even know who this person is. And they're like, okay, but they've already pre-decided who this person's going to be. So already you're on a level of the other, and the father kind of brings them in, like, who are you to talk about the other? And who are you to talk about the other? Like his gay daughter comes home with her wife. And he's like, so suddenly we're going to be worried about people who aren't like everybody else, so it's a whole thing. And it's like, it just, well, my actors were fantastic because it's just back and forth. And, but the next one I'm doing is, not really so much of an allegory for a lot of current times, but I'm doing the next one we're filming in February is a time travel movie. And a guy comes from 200 years in the future, and he gets picked up by the cops and brought to the FBI, and they interrogate him. And he's like, listen, I swear it's true. I'm from the future. And no one is impressed. And he's like, I'm not lying. They're like, no, we don't think you're lying. So we just have a couple of questions for you, sir. And like, everyone's just kind of bored. Like, they're just completely unimpressed with him. And then the movie explains like precisely why they're really just not that impressed. But yes, that's kind of like that's a true science fiction thing, but I have other stuff that I'm working on that does explore what happens when AI is different. What does what I like the idea of being frightened of the other, even if there's some kind of reason maybe you should be. But is that enough to make you do certain things? Like even if you feel you're justified, even if you might actually be justified to be a little wary of things you don't know, should you act on them until you do know?
Yeah.
So
She
I
try
try to
to
explore.
understand, maybe try to understand them, like if we can. Yeah.
Yep, and it doesn't always have the best result either. So I never like to be too preachy with it. Like I like to put the situation in there, but I always try to make it like one side's going to have the rosy outcome. You know,
Yeah.
I generally don't do that, or I leave it open to having the audience decide for themselves, like, well, what's really going on here. Um, Someone thought that Dad the Roommate was an anti-woke film because he goes back at the daughter who's gay, and like, oh, he put her in her place. Oh, I saw what you were doing there. I'm like, what was I doing there? And the message loud and like, received loud and clear, and I'm like, what the hell message did you hear? Like, are you new? Did you ever met me before? Right? It's like I'm so liberal. I'm like 2 steps away from arming the homeless. Like, like are you kidding me? So it's like okay, if that's what you got from it, I can't tell you what your interpretation of art is, but that's not what I wrote. That's not what I fucking wrote. But it's
Yeah.
just interesting what people see. People will see. I guess that's the other side of it.
They'll
People are going to see.
use it to fit their. But I think I said that a bit earlier, like how people take Orwell, or I see a lot of people on the right
Right? Yeah.
take George Carlin stuff. Like they'll be like MAGA people that like take George Carlin. They'll be like say what he would say this and that, but it's like, like did they not listen to all his jokes? Like he was always bashing the conservatives and the like. He was very liberal with a lot of like. He got annoyed with some of like the overly PC stuff,
Oh
but
yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
like he wasn't. He was still like liberal. He was still like on more on the left. Like a lot of his
I
views.
was lucky enough to see Carlin perform once. I went to see him at Pace University. That he did like a 2-hour stand up. This has to be 35 years ago, and he was incredible. But conservative leaning, no. Those whoever's thinking that absolutely missed the mark. They
Yeah, because like
definitely
there's
missed the
this
point of
like
him.
new like the conservatives. A lot of them now think they're the contrarians and the this, but it's
Yeah,
like
no,
yeah,
no, no. You're fetching the water and you're carrying it.
yeah,
Yeah, no, 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 no. There's nothing contrary about that. And was a subset of this is really interesting. I think, which will be a whole other topic. Of all the people who I've met in my life who demanded gun rights because they needed to stockpile weapons in case they ever needed to use it against an oppressive government.
yeah. But now it's an oppressive government they like, and it's like, oh, if they're putting people in a prison in another country because they said something, a political idea they didn't like, then that's fine because it's one of those un-American people. It's one of those
Yeah,
crazy, it's not me. It's not a real American
it's
like
one
me.
of them.
Yeah,
It's one of them type, and you know how they are.
yeah,
Yeah, and it's the most insane thing.
yeah,
Like when they start breaking the Constitution, taking away our
yeah,
constitutional rights, and start making camps, I'm gonna fire. And it's like
yeah,
they're literally doing it right now, and you're
yeah,
smiling. Like, where are your guns now? And I'm not saying people should go out and get guns and
yeah.
fucking shoot people, but like your whole thing, your whole life was this.
Yeah, like Alex Jones was always talking about like tyranny taking over, but now he's like a
Yeah,
cheerleader for it.
of course he is, because he can make money selling more dick pills about it.
Yeah,
And that boy needs all the money he can get because he owes like, what does he owe, like $4 billion?
yeah, because the Sandy Hook conspiracy.
Who in the hell? Oh yeah, yeah. I don't know. I don't know. What people said to me, how do you make money saying that those children were crisis actors? I'm thinking, how do you find the people to give you them who are willing to give
Yeah,
you the money because you're saying that? Like that's the scarier part to me.
yeah, because I think though, like people like those conspiracy theories, people there's just like a lot of people who like they'll watch a couple of YouTube videos and buy in, but then they won't look into all this other stuff that goes against the conspiracy.
Yeah, yeah. Christopher Hitchens, love him or hate him. I have mixed feelings about the guy, but when he was alive, he would say things like this. He would say, we are pattern seeking mammals, and we would rather have a conspiracy theory than no theory at all.
Yeah.
We'd rather see lies in something than not understand what something is and just try to reason it out. We'd rather just have the fast thing because we're looking for patterns. That's why you can see faces in things.
Yeah.
That's why we can see things like we experience deja vu, things like that. We're pattern seeking mammals.
But at least like with some,
survive.
Yeah, but at least with like some conspiracies, it would make sense why they would do it. Like for the war in Iraq, like that they would stage something here so we would go into Iraq,
right.
Or JFK would make sense. And actually, there is some hints that maybe there was something going on with that. I don't know for sure, but but with Sandy Hook, what would the government have even gained? Like they didn't take away the gun. Like I don't see what.
Yeah, I guess in the long term, like if you stage 8 or 9 more of these, then they'll come and take the guns away. But there's been a mass shooting every day in America.
Yeah,
for
so like all years. These, how many false flags are they going to do before they just?
Yeah. It's like I'm sure there are people right now. All those poor people that died in the Indian air crash. I guarantee you, there's a whole conspiracy world right now saying, well, it's the Ukrainian missiles. They misfired and went across continents and it hit that plane. Those were.
That's the other thing. The whole like anti-Ukraine, pro-Russia thing. It's just ridiculous.
The same people that were like Russia's our enemy, and now it's like we have to understand where they're coming from.
Yeah. They just like dictatorships. That's what it is.
That's Orwellian shit, because for the first half of that book, right, they're at war with East Asia, and then they're at war with Eurasia, and they've always been allies with East Asia.
It's like it fluctuates who the enemy. They just had to have somebody.
and then Winston's job was to erase all of the mentions, saying, well, of course we've always been at war with them. They're the enemy. And there's a great theory saying that that there actually was no war, that those 3 regions were using a form of English socialism that you see in the Ingsoc you see in 1984. The different regions were using the same playbook, and they were actually all in communication and in trade with each other and staging this fake war to keep the people going and keep them constantly angry, because then they'll constantly produce and they'll constantly listen and they'll constantly
love Big Brother. That's
right. So you have a Big Brother in the middle of Asia, like it's like somewhere like around Iran. You have a Big Brother in China. You have a Big Brother in all these different places, and then there's an American version. So it's like, well, what's going on there then? It is the aftermath of a war, but it's like there's a theory that like those 3 places, they decide to change it up every now and then to keep the people fresh and keep them on point. And all of the explosions and all the battles and all that stuff, it's all just stage shit. And horror finally makes sense, like the ultimate conspiracy theory in that world. Yeah. It's the same. It's the same thing.
Yeah. Well, so is that also kind of relates to the animal farm too? Like, the people who were all conspiracy minded, now they get in charge. They're the ones doing what they said they were against.
Precisely. But they're doing it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
All for the right reasons. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. What's that curse? May you live in interesting times?
Yeah.
We're definitely living in them, brother. We're definitely living in them. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. It'd be one interesting TV show if it wasn't real. America would be an interesting TV show if it wasn't reality.
Yeah. It would just be like, look what might happen someday.
Yeah.
But if you had newscasts from today and you showed them 40 years ago, people would be like, wow, I hope that never happens.
Well, actually, even I think even on like The Simpsons, like 20 years ago, I think it used to be a joke, like, oh, one day Trump will be president. Eventually.
Yeah. Friggin' Oprah Winfrey had him on her show back in the day, asking if he's going to run. Are you going to run?
Yeah.
Oprah fucking Winfrey. It's like
That's weird though. Like he kind of changed his brand around a lot too, because he used to be like friends with the I don't know, like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like he's just a showman, really. Like he doesn't have any consistent
yeah. It's
ideology. He
wherever the
latches on to different
yeah,
things. That, yeah,
yeah, whatever the bigger sell is,
yeah.
if
And his
he
positions
can
change like all the time. Like it's
if he could make more money becoming a Buddhist monk right now,
yeah.
he'd be putting on robes.
He'll be like, I'd be the greatest Buddhist monk ever. You know, with
Yeah, yeah,
Zen. It's
exactly. No one understood Zen. People don't know Zen. I got Zen. I called Steven Seagal. He gave me Zen. You know, it's like okay, but if he could make more money on that, he'd be a Buddhist monk tomorrow.
yeah, exactly.
And then 70 million Americans would say, you know, we always knew he'd be a Buddhist monk, and that's why we started learning Buddhism.
Yeah.
We always knew. I mean, it
But
was
I almost
clear.
think that's what like some people saw in him. Like, not that I agree, because I don't like Trump at all, but I think some people like they saw that, because like yeah, he's not a good guy, but like he was playing his own game,
Yeah.
not like the same game as the other politicians. I think that's what some people liked. They didn't think he was like the other politicians. Like,
I know
yeah,
when he first won, that's what most people I know that voted for him. That's exactly what they said. You know, and a lot of those people later on were like, "Yeah, this is not what we asked for."
yeah,
But they were replaced by people who were like, "Yeah, we weren't sure about that guy. We love what he's fucking doing now, man. We love it." And now he could just stay. Like we don't need to vote anymore. We're fine. Just
yeah,
stay. Like we were on the fence about it, but now we're right
yeah.
behind.
Well,
And
now
I
and
know
some of the
people do
people
that.
that
Yeah.
supported him are getting screwed by like him, like you know all the cuts and stuff like that. So
But they'll still blame someone else.
yeah,
They'll still never blame him. It's just never gonna. That's truly the Big Brother thing. I can't be wrong. There can't be buyer's remorse because Jesus would have told me otherwise.
yeah,
It's like, okay, great, terrific, all right, cool.
yeah, like a cult kind of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's a few friends of mine got very upset when they were told they were in a cult. Got very very upset, and I'm like, go on Wikipedia, look up the definition of cult, and then tell me how it's not that. Just look it up. Just look it up. A guy tried to indoctrinate me into a cult like 20 years ago. So I mean, I know the spiel. It's
Yeah,
like no, I'm not buying you. But yeah, it's absolutely when the person in charge can't be wrong. There's no other way to call it.
yeah,
There's
exactly.
no, there's just no, there's nothing else you can call it. When the leader is not allowed to be wrong, you're either in North Korea
Yeah.
or or
And I
you're
think he even likes Kim Jong Un, from what I understand. Like,
what?
yeah, yeah,
I think he hates him because he's not white, but I
yeah,
think he loves the mentality. He
yeah,
loves the fact that people are terrified of him and see him as a god. I think that he absolutely loves that kind of stuff.
yeah,
Like wouldn't want him around his daughter, but like definitely loves the idea.
yeah. They're like total control, kind of. Yeah,
And worship.
yeah.
You can have control.
Yeah. Well, he's a narcissist. That's what they like.
Yeah,
The
it's the
concept
worship.
of.
It's
Yeah,
the way they look at him. He said it. The way they stand up when he walks to a room, they all stand up and they all look at him adoringly. And it's like,
yeah. And what was that line he said? He said like I could walk down in the middle of the street, I could shoot someone, and I wouldn't lose a follower.
and I think he's 100% right.
Yeah,
I think he could shoot a
yeah,
baby in the Oval Office, and most of the people that voted for the man would say, "Man, it got to be a reason he shot that baby."
yeah. Well, that baby was going to grow up to be a communist.
We heard that baby might have been the devil, and we talked about it in church, and the preacher said it might have been the devil, and we think that he did a godly thing, and he saved America. Now we could be great again because that baby's dead.
And that also made me think of like The Boys, the doing great. Like I feel like Homelander is a good kind of commentary on that.
Boys is fantastic.
Yeah,
And the guy playing Homelander was
yeah.
so
And then people were actually liking his character, like some of the audience, and he's like, "Wait, you guys are missing the point. This guy's not
Yeah.
supposed to be good. Even the actor who played Homelander was
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. It's like, no, I haven't portrayed him being a nice person at all. Like, this is not something you should ever want to be. That's not what it's supposed to be about at all. Insane.
Yeah.
I love that show though.
Yeah.
I love that.
So why like, because a lot of people say, oh, they just want entertainment, they don't want their politics, and like, certain people said that with Andor, they want more like the pew pew.
Right.
But why do you think we need this kind of art? Why not just like the entertainment? Why the art that's uncomfortable?
There's nothing wrong with stuff that's entertainment. I mean, like, you could put on South Park, or you could put on like Family Guy or something. You could be entertained as hell. Bob's Burgers, you can be entertained as hell.
Even though South Park sometimes has social commentary.
Well, they do, but sometimes it's just like, what the hell? What are they doing?
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll nail it. But there's nothing wrong with just having some fun, commentary on, commentary-free art forms, and, it could be a lot of fun. Kill Bill movie's perfect example. Yeah. But I think that a lot of times throughout history, what we know about things that were going on is through art.
Yeah.
And now we have so many different ways to do it. It doesn't have to just be paintings or sculpture, or be, it could be visual. I think that if people don't use their platform or use their ability to speak their truth, why are we bothering? Honestly, why are we bothering? What possible better thing to do than is to show the world itself and say, listen, this is how I see what's going on. And then inspire the next people to go and say, yeah, this is what I see going on. And I agree with that, and I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
It's communication, and it
helps people learn from their times. That's how people are able to say, like, oh, this is just like 1984. This is just like,
Right. It's really anything like that. Orwell's a perfect example, because it's, he didn't mean for it to be a textbook. Like, it's not a manual.
Oh yeah, I think I saw that. Yeah, that wasn't meant to be an instruction, man.
Right. It's not a friggin' owner's manual. I guess it's how it's taken. I don't know. It's important for people who have a certain mentality to push what they see as truth, and then it's up for other people to say, I accept this or I don't. But if they can never say, I wasn't told, I wasn't shown. You can reject it, but you can't say, no one ever showed me.
No.
And then it might take a long, 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 long time. I know people that come to the end of their lives and they're like, the religious views I had, the political views I had, they were wrong. I know people that came 67 years old going, I was wrong about that. And maybe wouldn't have done that had they not seen something like Get Out, or they had not read an Ursula Le Guin book, or not understood. It's like,
because Get Out,
so really vitally important.
Yeah, Get Out was really good. Like, helped you kind of like see the fear that, like, I wouldn't understand, because, like, I'm not a person of color, like, being, dealing with that kind of, like, that fear. Right. When he's around those that group of the white, what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah, and they that was just done so well, because they didn't try to sugarcoat it, and I think that's important. And we're losing history, like you said. Like, there are people that don't want to teach history. There are people that don't want to. There's a reason there's an absolute idiot in charge of the Department of Education. Yeah. Like, there's a reason for this. Yeah. It's because they know she can't do it. She can't make it better. She can only make it worse, and it's exactly by design.
Yeah, and that kind of relates to, like, I feel like there's always kind of been, like, an anti-intellectualism here, like, in the U.S. too.
I will tell you this. I worked at a Catholic school. I counted money for Catholic school for 7 years. I was the treasurer of the school. And I said to the principal, they're closing a lot of schools, and we're not getting the same kind of kids coming in. And he said, yeah, it's because we did our jobs. I said, what do you mean? This is a guy dedicated, lifelong religious brother, dedicated his life to Jesus, to, everything. He said, we didn't just teach religion. We taught critical thinking. And the more critical thinking that we taught you, all of you as a generation, the less you needed us. And I went, oh, shit. Like, I kind of felt that, but I never heard anyone say it, let alone someone who was a principal of one of the schools. He said, yeah, y'all don't need us anymore. And I'm like, oh, shit. It's kind of true, and that's yeah. That was an eye-opening moment for me, but yeah, the more you learn, the more you see things, the less you need to rely on whatever the hell, you think for yourself and you make different choices, and that's vitally important.
So wait, that was like a whole bunch of students left at once, or that was like a gradual thing? And then
it was we saw attrition rates year after year after year going down to the point where we barely had enough students to keep the place running.
Because they just questioned the religious stuff, or just like everything?
There was a lot of it was financial, but most of it was, we don't really need to have this right now. Like, this isn't a requirement in my life to have my kids go to this school, right? There was also a financial burden because there were less and less nuns and less priests. So they had to have more and more lay people. And since lay people have to pay their own rent and pay their own food, they need bigger salaries and they need unions. And the school system and the Catholic school system wasn't designed for that, But eventually there were so few students that they couldn't keep the place open, so they sold it and turned it into condos. And then the gym is $18.1 million if you want to live there, on 87th and West End. But that was something he had told me, and flat out I was like, holy shit, he's right. He's absolutely right. The more critical thinking you have, the more you don't. You can still believe, but the less you rely on mythology, the less you rely on it. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess my final thought is I encourage people to like question what they've taught or always believed, or maybe like if you think you know everything about like a certain group or something, actually talk to someone from that group and get to know them. Because that can really like, it not only helps you like question your bias, but it's also like reward. It's like you'll have rewarding like unexpected like connections too, and like you'll learn things you never thought before.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I mean, I can't think of experiences I've had in my life where I regretted meeting someone who wasn't me.
Yeah.
Like I've never had that experience of someone being like, oh, I could have done without learning about that culture. Like, I've never had that experience.
Yeah.
Like individuals, it could be, well, it could have been really good not to meet that guy again. But like that guy would have been anybody. But yeah. The more you
just go by like the media and stuff, you're told a very like black and white simplistic view of things that isn't always accurate.
That is something that Andor did perfectly. When they had rows of, not to get spoilers, but they had the rows of reporters, all giving the same speech to the different networks about how violent everything was. Meanwhile, there's nothing.
Yeah, and it was like completely untrue about these people.
and Cyril goes to one today after the other, and he sees them all doing this. Like, what are you talking about? They're right behind me. This isn't happening. And that was I think that's what sparked him, those reporters. I think they're the main ones that sparked him. Like, oh my God, wait a minute. Are they all in on this? Like, this
that's why I had to watch that like more than once, because there's a lot of stuff you don't catch the first time.
I just watched the series again with a good friend of mine, and she loved it, and it was my third watching of Andor. Well, second watching of the entire series, but then like certain episodes I watched 3 or 4 times.
Right.
And that one I definitely watched 3 or 4 times. Yeah, I think 4 times at this point. Yeah, jeez.
Yeah.
But yeah, just There's the little subtleties of those kinds of things you see in there. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
And Rogue One was already good, but this just made the series made Rogue One like even better.
Did you go right into Rogue One when you finished it?
Yeah, it's awesome. Like totally different.
Isn't it awesome?
Yeah,
it's just like another episode. Like, oh shit. You know, so I want to do Andor into Rogue One into Star Wars in one day, like the last 2 episodes of Andor, 3 episodes of Andor,
and
into Rogue One into Star Wars, and then just go right through.
Because then they made a small character big, the leader of the rebellion woman, Mon Mothma.
Yeah. Who the hell saw that coming?
Yeah,
you know, and because they expanded on her in the cartoon series, I didn't really see a lot of that. But they made her a bigger character. Then that's why they had her in Rogue One, and you know, but who thought, like, you know, when I was 14 years old seeing Return of the Jedi, I'm sitting there going, okay, so there's this lady. Who's she? She's someone important. She's kind of dressed like Princess Leia was, so she must be someone important. Like, I had no idea what the hell this was. You know, make her the central character, and then show like the elite of the elite how they lived and what they did during the rebellions. Perfection. You know, I was not expecting that.
Yeah.
I was happily surprised.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some good shit, man. I love that.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to think, like, where to, like, any final thoughts you want to add or anything, or?
I say this all the time, and it's true. There's never been a better time to create art. There's never been a time where it's easier to you for physically produce things. You can shoot with the camera in your pocket. The camera in your pocket is a stronger camera than Voyager spaceship has, and they went to different planets. You can record anything. You can write anything. Everyone has access to a computer. You can write. If you need a pencil, write with that. Everyone has access to art. Everyone has access to everything. And all you have to do is just try it. You know, just create something. It doesn't matter what it is. Interpretive dance, sculpture, architecture, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know,
it might not even be good at first, but then, like, as you get going with it,
unless there is reincarnation and you are Mozart, no, you're going to suck. And you have to just work at it and build from it, and then say, what do I like and what I don't like. You know, there are editing choices that I made 10 years ago I would never make today because I think that I'm better now, you know, but I couldn't do it better now than if I wasn't doing it then, if I wasn't starting. Just try it. And things, there's never going to be a perfect time for it. There's never going to be a time where it's right in your life. You know, you have an idea, write it down. Even if it's something you don't get to right away, write it down. I want to learn auto mechanics. I want to build a race car. I want to fix televisions and make art form out of old TV sets. I want to do anything. You know, I want to build crazy ass synthesizers back there and, you know, try to figure out how to use them. You know, it's like you have to just do something. You know, and the time is now, because no one ever knows how much time they have. So just do it all now. Do everything now.
You gotta live the moment. Yeah.
You have to. There's so many things in our lives where you can't live in the moment. You know, you can't just do that. You can't just say, screw everything, I'm going to go off on a sabbatical. You know, it's like someone's got to pay your rent. You know, you have to have a job. You have to do something. But damn, just create art. You know, a piece of paper and a pencil. You could start writing the next Harry Potter series. You could start writing the next Jaws. You could start writing anything. You know, or with your cell phone camera, you know, like film different people at your job, or film, you know, with their permission, film people on the street, film things you've seen, and then create something out of that. Just do it. It won't cost a dime. You know, just create something.
Yeah, exactly.
And always create something.
Yeah, and any of you listening, like, feel free to reach out. Like, if there's comment, like, if there's any art that, like, what art recently has got you to question things, or like what are your thoughts on this conversation? I'd like to hear from you, the listeners, too. And I don't know if you want to plug, like, your page to follow or anything.
Yeah, you guys just go to pdevaney.com. You can find me as my name on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm not Rev Pat. Just go to film festivals. go see what people are making. If you're into films, go to film festivals by you.
Yeah.
Take the afternoon, just go and see what people are creating. You'll be absolutely amazed.
Yeah.
I co-manage the First Contact Film Festival every year, and we had wonderful films this year. People came out of there and they said, "I can't believe it, people are making these."
Yeah.
Out of the side of the studio system, beautiful films, absolutely beautiful. firstcontactfilmfestival.com. But just definitely do that. Just explore everything you can. Go out and see something. Go to the opera. Go to see a dance recital. Alvin Ailey's around. Go see Alvin Ailey.
I'd be interested to hear like if anybody was inspired by this or they started creating anything new, like because of this, or experienced anything new because of this. Well, yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, when we were doing conventions for zombie hunters, we had one young man came up to us and he was like 14 years old and he's like, "I want to make movies." We said, "Then go make a movie." And he's like, "No, but I want to." We're like, "Yeah, then go ahead and do it." 2 years ago at the Long Island Film Expo, Long Island International Film Expo, Life, that same kid walked up to me, and he's like 23 years old now, and he's like, "How you been?" I'm like, "Oh shit!" Right? And he had this movie, and it was like, I said to him afterwards, I feel like I got mugged. Like he did this crazy crime, drug drama, and shit. But he was like, "I want to make a movie." We're like, "Go make a movie," and he went out and did it. Then he made another one, and he got into this one.
That's another thing. Like you never know how you're inspiring someone else, or like one word, like encouragement.
No,
what's gonna? Do.
He was on his way. He was gonna do it, no matter what my dumbass said. But he heard enough people that weekend. It was the Monster Mania. It had to be at least 10 years ago. He heard enough people that weekend telling him all the same thing. Like, "We believe in you. Go and do it. Go and do it. Go and do it. Create today. Start now." And he did, and he won best editing of any film in the thing.
Oh.
And up against some heavy hitters, like some really good work. And his film was phenomenal. And I was like, "Man, how did you have this in you?" It was crazy. It was like watching Reservoir Dogs for the first time. Like this, but like psychedelic. I'm like, what the But I'll never forget that kid. Now he's a grown ass man. He's making films.
Nice.
So yeah, just go out and do it. Everyone just do it.
Yeah, and now that I think of it, like actually, I think that's how I initially was inspired to do the podcast. I forget who it was, but somebody said to me like, "Oh, just go start a podcast," and then I just did.
Yeah, just do it. Just always be creating.
Well, that's about it for this episode of Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. Thanks again, Patrick, for coming on. It's been a good chat. And if you want to keep updated with future episodes, I'm on Spotify, iTunes, or wherever you get your podcasts. Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. Social media, Let's Talk About the Deep Stuff. And that's about it for this episode. We'll catch you on the next one.